Hi, you're listening to the Content Sells podcast, the show all about how to create content to attract, convert, and keep your ideal clients. Welcome to episode 243. I'm Suzi Dafnis, and here with me is my co-host, Michelle Falzon. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, Suzi, I am doing really well. I feel like one of those juggling acts in a circus today. I've been juggling about 50 different things, and it's only Monday morning as we record this show. But I feel good. I feel really excited about our guest because it is one of our fabulous masterminders who is doing something really wonderful and has been for some time in the field of getting free publicity to grow her business.
Yeah, and she's really, like you said, doing some really great things. It's something that she's dialed right in, and she hasn't been in the media once or twice. It is part of her content marketing strategy. So we're going to be talking to her about that. Her name is Amanda Farmer. Inside the mastermind, we kind of jokingly call her the Amanda Farmer. And here's what she does in real life. So she provides upfront, really no-nonsense legal advice and representation. She has a law practice called Lawyers Chambers, but she's also an incredibly in-demand speaker and educator, and she's been working with strata managers and apartment owners and residents for over 15 years, helping them demystify the complexities of apartment living. And she does that through guest speaking, through her podcast, through her Your Strata Property membership. She's also presented to industry organisations like the Real Estate Institute in New South Wales, as well as their Women in Real Estate Conference and many, many key industry events. And the reason we're interviewing her today is that she has been a guest expert on Sky News Real Estate. She has been on A Current Affair, on the Daily Telegraph, on Radio Sydney, on ABC News, on TGB, on Sydney Morning Herald, on Sky News, and a bunch more mainstream media. And as I mentioned, her getting in the media isn't just like this weird thing that happened once. It is actually a strategy that she's using. She's using free publicity to grow her business and increase her profile and her authority. So let's find out what she's doing. Let's go ahead and get her on the line. Hey, Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hey, Suzi. Great to be here.
I am so excited. Michelle and I love this topic, and we couldn't think of a better person who is just a living demonstration of using free publicity to grow their profile in their business. So what I'd love to know is what inspired you to pick this particular method as a way to grow your profile and to grow your business? And that is leveraging media and publicity.
Yeah, well, I wanted to reach more people, to get more clients and be able to, from that big list of clients, be able to choose my ideal clients, the people who I really want to work with. And, when I first started out, I didn't have a big budget to pay for advertising, to sponsor events, to put ads in newspapers and on bus stops. That just wasn't me. It's really still not me. But I recognized that being able to get quoted in a story as an expert, to be able to have my voice on the radio, to have my head on the TV was a free, incredibly effective way to reach a lot of people.
Now, unlike, and I was saying this in the introduction for you, is unlike, some businesses might, they might be nominated an award or they somehow end up in the media once. Like your list of the media that I rattled off in the introduction is so extensive. And so it's not like an ad hoc, maybe I'll get in the media. You actually have a strategy. So can you share some of the key strategies that you've used and continue to use to get on the front page of papers, to get on television and all the fabulous places that you've been?
Yeah, it is a strategy, that's for sure. It's not just something that I've decided, that looks like fun, I might give that a go this week. And it's also something of a long game, I want to be clear. It is about relationship building with these journalists and people who may be able to get you a spot on these shows. I definitely started out dabbling with a PR agent, hiring someone who might connect me to these people. That can get expensive. And look, if you've got the budget for it, great. It can really fast track you and get you in through those otherwise closed doors. But for most of us who don't really have the budget for that, you got to think a little outside the square. So for me, I've really tapped into a lot of the resources out there, whether they're online courses or masterclasses that PR agents or ex-PR experts have been putting out there to teach you how to pitch to the media, how to communicate with journalists, what it is that they want, what are the stories that they're looking for. And I've invested time and a bit of money in educating myself in that space. I make sure that I carve out time to be consistent about my approaches to media. Just popping up every now and then is not a great strategy, but having a story to share once a month, being alert to those stories when I'm working with my clients. Hey, I think this would be a really great one for a current affair or the Daily Telegraph. And as I said, building those relationships with the journalists. So sending them stories that I think they will find interesting. They've got lots of hours to fill or lines to fill, and they are always looking for stories. And if they don't feature you or don't pick up your story one month, they might the next. Keep popping up, keep being there and ready and available for them when they do want you.
I love how much your radar is on this. You're intentional. It is a strategy, as you said. You're sort of thinking, 5 steps ahead. Okay, I'm working with this client. This might make a great story. You're building those relationships. And so that's what we mean by strategy. There is a method to what you're doing. And so while you're helping a client, you're also like running it through the scanner of, oh, could this be PR worthy? Could this get me in front of the media? And that's the difference between having an ad hoc approach to something and having a strategic approach. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Now, Amanda, PR isn't always an immediate flood of leads, although sometimes people think it is. They think, I got featured in the Sydney Morning Herald. Tomorrow my business is going to be worth 3 times as much as it is right now. It can be a bit of a long game. So can you kind of let us know, like, how has being recognised as an expert in strata law impacted your business, impacted your credibility? What kind of opportunities have opened up for you?
Sorry. For me, it has really been about positioning myself as the go-to expert in my space. That is the power of media. As you say, Michelle, it's not about being on the Today Show and then all of a sudden I've got all these people opting into my ebook. I might have that, but they might not all be qualified. They might not all turn into paying clients, nor might I want them to or be able to serve them. But it's definitely about having that history of being featured in these publications so that when someone is looking for a strata lawyer and they hit my website, they can see all those logos that I've got on my homepage. They can watch a little snippet of one of my TV interviews and get that feel that I know what I'm talking about and others recognize that I know what I'm talking about too. So a big part of my strategy, as you both know, is really being the go-to, being the guru, being the strata lawyer, the Amanda Farmer, as we laugh about sometimes, so that I can have this essentially wait list of clients that I can choose who I work with, what kind of work I do. I can set my rates where I believe they need to be, and ultimately build the business that I want to build.
And we're all for that. We love that so much. And yes, we do joke about you being the Amanda Farmer every time we see you on some mainstream publication or in the television. And you also, though, I think have found great credibility in finding strategic partnerships. And, when you're trying to open bigger doors, I know that's been a really big byproduct too for you of just having this presence, this positioning in the media.
Yeah, thank you. That is a really good report. That is a really good point. Thank you for reminding me of it. When I pop into somebody's inbox and say, hey, I'm running an event, will you speak at that? When I, want to partner with somebody to attract people into a webinar that I'm doing, I think because I have spent these many years of positioning myself as the strata lawyer, as the go-to, people say, of course, Amanda, absolutely. Whatever it is that we can do to help you out, because we know that, if we want some help in our space as well, if we want to be on your podcast or we want to be on one of your platforms, we know how big your audience is because of this work that you've done, putting yourself out in the media. So it's that really nice little synergy that then works.
Mm. So let's talk a minute about the challenges. Like, you've had some great successes and breakthroughs, and it's not all roses. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to break in, or there are some things that we don't know when we're first getting started in something like this, or some doors that shut in our faces. What are some of the challenges you faced securing media coverage, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, when I'm meeting new journalists sometimes, or publications I haven't been featured in, maybe it's a radio station that I'd really like to be on, sometimes I find that they don't get what I do. And I want to bring this to your audience, because there might be some people listening who think, oh, I do something really niche or really random or very complicated, and media is not going to be for me. And I've definitely encountered that, where people have said, strata, either what is that? Are you a strata manager? Are you a real estate agent? Strata law? I didn't know that was a thing. Oh, I don't think people will really be that interested. So the way to combat that, I've learned, is to share stories. And that's where I said earlier, I'm always keeping my ears open now for any of my clients that are going through a tough time in their building, whether it's they can't have their pet, the building has said you can't keep a dog, or their apartment is moldy and leaking because the building won't fix it, then that's a great story that media will listen to and will be attracted to, because it's real, and you've got to train them. You've got to teach them that there are things going on in the real world here that they as a journalist might not know about, might not experience, but here's somebody who is, and that's a story that people can relate to.
I am so glad you mentioned that, because we can just we have the curse of knowledge. We just assume, well, I'm a strata manager, I'm talking to a journalist. They're just going to immediately realize the 10 different ways that's relevant to their audience. But you've really got to join those dots, like you were just saying. And I think stories are a great way to do that. But helping them see how this is going to be relevant to them, because we can't rely on the journalist's imagination. It's kind of making them do the work, right? Whereas we've got to do all that work.
Yeah. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, they want clicks on their website. They want people picking up the phone and dialing into their talkback station. They want viewers watching. So if you can show them how this is relevant to their audience, and sometimes you do need to, well, always really, you need to change your pitch or change your angle depending on the publication. The Australian Women's Weekly is going to want something different to what 2GB wants. They have a different audience. And so you've got to be picking those stories, or the angles in those stories that are going to suit them, to show that the journalists that, yeah, this is worth tuning into.
So good. So good. You, and it's evident by the answers that you're giving to the questions that we're posing. You mentioned that you have actually invested in your education in this area about how to work with the media. And you continue, I know, to invest on, getting better and better at this. For someone who's just starting to even think about using the media, what would you say the first few things that they should do in preparation are?
I think absolutely you need to consume the media that you want to be in, right? So if you want to be on the Today Show, watch the Today Show and see what kind of people are there, what kind of stories are they interested in, how do they relay those stories, and what angle do they take on those stories? And you'll immediately start having some light bulbs. Oh, I can see myself there sharing this particular piece of information. So reading the paper, it's something that I've had to be really intentional about, because I love living in my bubble and I love curating the podcasts only I want to listen to, and the books that I want to read. And I'm not big on consuming the news, but now I'm actually carving out time to consume the media. And you'll start to see the names of the journalists who are covering the topics that you can be an expert in. So you're reading the Financial Review and you're seeing who's writing about property, for example, and make your own spreadsheet. That's how I started out, making a spreadsheet of names, email addresses, if you can get them, the publication this person writes for, so that when you have that great story fall into your lap, or there's a change in the law, or there is something that's gone on in politics that really matches with what you deliver in your business, you can reach out to that person and introduce yourself, let them know, hey, I've got a story for you. This is what it's about. And be intentional and consistent about that. It's easy to get excited about it one week, but if you can block out that time in your diary once a week, even if it's just half an hour at first, to pay attention to this exercise, then your skills will really increase in good time.
I love it. So consume the media, get to know who the journalists are. That's a great way to start. Then I want to make my first pitch. What would your tips be?
Well, generally we're making our pitches by email, and we know the subject line is everything. We want them to open that email. So if you can think of a really sharp, hard-hitting subject line, it doesn't have to be what the headline is going to be in the paper, because somebody else writes that. That's not you who's writing that. You are only writing the subject line to get your email opened. I would really be spending most time on getting that subject line right and trying to get my email opened. And then in that first few lines is where you really want to capture that journalist's attention. They are getting hundreds, if not thousands, of pitches over the course of a day or so. And they are reading through them really, really quickly to see, especially if it's TV news and they've got to put something out every day, to see if there's something that jumps out to them. So I wouldn't be writing, hi, Sam, hope you've had a really great Easter break. I went on holidays with my family. That was wonderful. So glad to be back. No, let's just get to the point, hit them hard with that subject line and get to the point of your pitch. And you can put dot points in there. Statistics, recent data is a good one to capture attention as well. News loves that.
I know that because your radar is on this, that you can be very opportunistic. So when something happens, you're very quick to act. Can you give us an example of where something happened in the state in which you prioritize, which is New South Wales, or something happened in the news and your response is, and the timing and the way you were able to be the right person at the right time, and you could be opportunistic, that's what landed you on the front page?
Yeah, in my space, when there's disasters that happen, so something I'm thinking of at the moment is a fire in an apartment building, and we've had a few of those. I know, because I'm consuming the media, that this concept of fires in apartment buildings, e-scooters and e-bike fires, that's been something that's on the radar.
What is that? That's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it's a bit scary. And then it was a month or so ago, there was a fire in, I think it was in Queensland, where there was a Brisbane block, and unfortunately an elderly man died. And I know that when that is on the news and I sort of see it in my feeds that are coming through, a lot of people are writing about that. But I've learned through my training, okay, let's take a news story like that and let's put a different spin on it. So I immediately opened up my inbox and started typing out what was essentially a pitch to say, look, this Brisbane apartment fire, I know you know about it, and unfortunately a man has died. I'm a strata lawyer and I've got a different take on this. Most apartment buildings are not prepared for emergencies. And here's some data from some research that was done by an owners advocacy group earlier this year, popping the data in there. And then I'm sending that out to, I think in that case, I sent it first out to the Daily Telegraph and said, giving you the opportunity if you'd like to feature this story before I send it to anybody else. So that's another little tip there. Journalists, they want to have the scoop. They want to be, we're the only one with the strata lawyer's voice on this. And that's the approach that I take. If there's something happening urgently, you do need to be willing and available to jump on it urgently and to try and pitch it perhaps with a different angle, even if it's already in the news. So good. So good. Like that little nugget, if you're listening, is a game changer. And this is why this is a strategy. Amanda's paying attention. She's noticing. She's making quick connections. She's, putting it out there to the media very, very quickly, giving them an exclusivity, but, being really responsive, because it is such a key part of her strategy. Thank you. Pleasure.
Yeah, something you said there that I really picked up on was you saw the news article, like you saw what had happened, and then you said, and I opened up my inbox and started typing an email. And I think there was this real timeliness to that, right? Like it's happened and you want to be responding. You can't think about it for a couple of days and then go back. That news cycle has well and truly gone. And picking up a few things that you're saying about PR-worthy stories, you're kind of catching something that's happening right now in the news, something really topical. You're coming at things with a different angle. So you came at it with the strata manager angle. as we kind of develop these relationships with our journos and with the media, and you mentioned before you want to keep coming back to them with good articles and good stories and good ideas, can you say a few more? Are there other things in your toolkit around what kind of different stories you're going out to people with? Where are you getting these ideas from, apart from what's going on in the news, perhaps?
My own personal experience, definitely. So in addition to serving apartment owners, I am an apartment owner myself. And I think sometimes we can see, if you subscribe to Source Bottle, for example, you might see call outs for something that you think is unrelated to what you do, but you have your own personal experience. And whether that's my experience in my apartment building, or a good example recently was there was a call out through Source Bottle for a young family that had moved from the city to the regions. And I thought, yep, that's me and my family, and responded to the journo and said, this was our experience. We got featured on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. We got featured a full spread in the middle. It turned out to be a week where they were talking about regional businesses and people living in the regions. And it didn't mention anything about my business, but it said, I'm a strata lawyer. Amanda Farmer, strata lawyer. That's all I need. That's all I want, even just to say what your occupation is. And it looks fantastic on your socials and where you're sharing it with your audience, that once again, you're in the media. So don't always think about, how can I feature my business? And that should really never be top of mind when you're talking to media. They don't want to know about your business. They want to know about your clients and your stories that you're sharing. And it is through the back door, essentially, that people come to know your name, and then they come to know about your business. So however it is, even if it's your personal experience that you might get a great feature, go for it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, the work we do with our clients, something you might be finding coming up for your clients as an issue can be inspiration for a story as well. And I'm thinking about our listeners right now and, where their story ideas might be coming from. I know for me, when somebody in our mastermind's having a challenge with something and we see 2 or 3 people having a challenge with it, you start to go, oh, this is something that could be actually something that's a bit wider, a wider interest story. And I love what you said there about not forcing your business on the journos and the journalists. And I think, this is part of maintaining and nurturing the relationship. If they think you're just somebody that's just going to give them, be really pushy about getting featured or whatever, or you're going to write them off because they didn't include your URL or whatever. Any other tips before we kind of move from this topic that you would use for maintaining and nurturing those media relationships?
Yeah, it's so true what you say about building that relationship, being available to the journalists on their time frame is really important. They're working to deadlines, and it's important to ask them if you're going to get back to them with some information, or they need a case study and you think, okay, I'm going to ask a few of my clients if they'll be interested in being part of this story. Ask the journalist, what is your deadline on this, so that they know you're being respectful of that. Absolutely returning their calls, even if you're away and you can't necessarily help. And just, always keeping in mind what it is that they want to deliver, not necessarily what you want to get out of it. You will absolutely get something out of this, let me tell you. But if you're approaching it with that openness of giving them what it is that they need, then you're going to reap the benefits of that. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. And yeah, and you said it, Michelle said it. Sometimes it's like, well, they didn't put my URL, and like, that's it. PR doesn't work because they won't put your URL, but there's so much more to it. And having that long-term view is what I think has been part of your success. The Amanda Farmer, is there anything else that you want to leave us with?
Look, I just want to circle back to the strategy point, and I want to be super clear that this does take time, and I think it's nice to be on TV. For most people, they like that. It's fun to be on the front page of the paper, but really have a think about how that's serving your business. Is that serving your business? If you've got all this flood of people coming to you because they've seen you on the TV, can you serve them? Do you have that kind of model set up? And I've done a lot of work to set that model up to be able to leverage my services in a way that reaching a lot of people is actually a key part of my strategy and a key part of what grows my business. So if this is a strategy that you're thinking about, have that mapped out. You know, how am I going to serve these people once they all flood to me because I've had that fantastic story? And then if you can see that working for you and you can see that return, then yes, be consistent, carve out the time, and have fun. I do it because I really find it fun. If you do too, then that's another wonderful part of being a business owner.
Amanda Farmer, thank you so much for being on the show. We adore you, as I hope you know. We're very excited to see you at the next mastermind meeting. And thank you for all the gems of wisdom. And every time we see you on the front page, we're like
You do.
doing the happy dance for you.
You're my biggest fans.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Suzi and Michelle.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I adore her. She knows her stuff on so many levels.
She really does. And you know what she was saying there at the end about having fun with it, it doesn't have to be daunting. It can be, and it really shows, I think, in the work that she's doing. She's being creative. She's doing things that sort of inspire her. And the whole thing's just really a virtuous cycle. And I love an example of someone using media in that way.
Yeah, and with such intentionality. So she said intentional, consistent a couple of times. And I think that that's the difference, is that it's not a try it, didn't work, pitch one story, it didn't happen. It's being intentional and being consistent. And she's very clear that publicity is one of her marketing strategies. And so she puts the attention into it. She puts the brain cells into it. She invests in her education in order to, know how to do this well. She invests in the relationships with the journalists. And like she said, they're not going to pick up every story you pitch them, but they're going to remember you that next time because you sent them a good idea or you tried to help them out, and even if it didn't turn out. So that intentionality and consistency I loved.
Yeah, and the way that consistency really reflected in having a story to share at least once a month, if not more. Just, that was the practical what that looks like in real life. We can say be consistent, but then what does that really look like? Well, it looks like actually pitching stories to journalists on a regular basis. And like you said, maybe they won't pick you up one month, but they'll pick you up the next. And so the consistency is staying in the game and realizing that, it's not going to be their one particular journalist's cup of tea that day, or they've already got a strata lawyer or, an electrical expert or a solar expert or a fashion expert or whatever it is for that particular story. But that doesn't mean that they won't be the one that wants to pick you up next month. So staying in the game, having those stories to share on a regular basis was, I thought, a fantastic tip.
I also loved talking about being opportunistic. And I mean this in the highest sense of the word, looking at what those opportunities are. And because she's already built some of those relationships, when something happens in the media, and I remember during the pandemic when people were forced to live in their apartments for long periods of time, there were so many media opportunities for Amanda because she was very already aware that, okay, this is a strategy that I can use. What's happening in my apartment block? What's happening in apartment blocks around the country? Or, when one of her clients is having a problem with, say, the garbage bins aren't being put out or the dog isn't allowed or whatever, and she can pick up on these things, or she'll see a news story and she can see another follow-up angle. So it's that's kind of what makes her masterful at it. But I think that for whether you've done this before or not, there will be things that show up in the media that are relevant to your business. And sometimes it can be something that's kind of, you think, well, how is that relevant? Whether it's something happening in politics or something happening in pop culture, there might be something, for example, that someone wears on a runway that you can relate to your personal styling business. So you just want to be keeping your radar out for left field kind of ways to approach the media with something that's going to be timely and relevant.
Yeah, and that left field idea is often the interesting thing for the journalist, that different perspective, like what Amanda was talking about. Like, she's got this sort of legal sort of strata angle to the safety procedures for apartments that maybe is an angle the journalist hasn't seen before, and they want to be seeing to be coming out with something fresh. And I did think that, just to continue with that point you're making, I loved how she was sort of saying, you've got to be really explicit with the journalist about what the story really is and like tell stories or give examples. You can't expect the journalist to have the imagination or to join the dots. You've really got to join the dots for them. I thought that was great advice. And the other tip that I really loved was this idea of the value she's getting out of PR. And the main thing she's getting out of it is being the go-to person. And that's opening all kinds of doors that are worth a huge amount of value in terms of revenue and opportunities for her business, whether it's strategic alliances, big speaking opportunities where she can be more specific with a very specific audience and get them opting into her list or taking up her membership or whatever it might be. And also just even how she's using those mentions, like putting them on her website, featuring them in her bio, all of those things. And that's a real byproduct of PR that I think people step over. They think, well, it was that week in the paper. If I don't make most of it that week, that opportunity is gone. But once you've been featured on the Today Show, you can always mention that you were featured on the Today Show.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got logos in our marketing that are from years ago, but that publication is still around. That publication still exists. It still has worth. And so you definitely can get mileage out of it. Like you said, not just when the story runs, but into the future. Now, I remember because we used to get a lot of media and it used to be part of one of our key strategies. And I did know the publications and the journalists, but these days I consume very little mainstream media. And so I would actually find it really hard to come up with the journalists' names. And the reason I mention that is that Amanda talked about consuming the media that you want to be in, right? And so it's not like, well, I'm just going to look it up and look at that journalist's name. You want to look at the stories that journalist has done this week, this month, this year, and be able to have a conversation that shows that you actually do know what you're talking about. And the more that you can build those relationships, you'll know that that journalist, they typically work with these types of stories, or they like to tell stories that are hard luck stories or inspiring stories, etc. And all that knowledge in your bank of knowledge is really going to help you pitch the right stories to the right medium. Also, Amanda mentioned a resource called Source Bottle, and you may not have heard it, but it's a way to get into the media. It's a resource that we share with our members all the time, and we'll be sure to put a link in the show notes to that. It's free to subscribe to, and every day they say, hey, we're looking for people on these particular areas to be part of a story. And sometimes they're kind of fringe publications, but sometimes it's mainstream media. And so it's just worth having a subscription, because it's a free subscription, to be able to pitch your stories.
So good. Love it.
All righty. Thank you again, Amanda. As we mentioned at the top of the show, Amanda is one of our fabulous masterminders. She's been in our mastermind program for years and years, and she continues to grow and develop, having gone from having a one-on-one services business as a lawyer, where she would exchange her time for money, for having built this incredible business that has multiple leveraged ways of creating income, including her speaking engagements, her in-person events, her membership, which continues to grow and supports strata managers and owners all over the country. So congratulations, Amanda. We're so proud of you, and thank you for being on the show. Now, we have a listener to give a shout out to, Michelle, and that is the lovely Kat Matson of Impactful Presenters. She's a longtime member of the Her Business Network, and she helps business owners, leaders, and change makers who tend to ramble or lose their words when they most need them to become more confident and to speak with authority and impact. And she does that through her Impactful Presenters program. So she recently gave us a shout out saying, I'm a massive fan of Content Sells by Suzi, Dafnis, and Michelle Falzon for marketing how-to. That's what we do. We do marketing how-to. So thank you, Kat, for the shout out. Michelle, anything we've mentioned here on the show, we're going to be putting over on our show notes page, which our listeners can find at herbusiness.com/be famous, herbusiness.com/be famous. Michelle, what have we got coming up in the next episode?
We have another interview coming up. I love interviews. I mean, I love it when it's just you and me, but I also love it when we have these wonderful people that are in our sphere that come and share their brilliance. And we're going to be talking with Melinda Cohen, and it's all about attracting high-paying clients and growing a successful coaching business. But of course, it's not just about coaching. A lot of the lessons that Melinda going to share on the show is all about stuff that's relevant to all kinds of small business owners. And Melinda's someone who's helped literally thousands of coaches to grow successful businesses. And she's going to be sharing some tips from her new book, The Professional Coach. And On that show, you're going to learn how you can get some amazing free goodies from her, including some powerful templates, checklists, and a free audio version of her book. And you may even want to check that out in advance. Her new book, The Professional Coach, is at theprofessionalcoachbook.com.
That is coming up 2 weeks from now. So if you don't already subscribe to the show, be sure to subscribe. If you are a regular listener and you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the show, we would love it if you would leave us a rating or a review. Thank you once again to Amanda Farmer of Your Strata Property. Michelle, is there anything you want to say before we go?
I was just reflecting on when Amanda really started this Be Famous. That was kind of a mantra that she had. She intentionally went out and sought this media. She also had another word that went with it, which was fierce. And she's been really fierce in this really wonderful way. And I think for anybody that's thinking of dabbling with this, thinking of dipping your toe in the water, just borrow some of Amanda's fierceness as you step into these conversations with your journalists. And we can't wait to see you in the media.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time right here on the Content Sells podcast. Bye for now.